I'd like to welcome you to the first of what we hope to be several interactive programs throughout the year on improving our photographic skills. And we hope to have several of these programs this year, and if it goes well, and they will be in addition to the regularly scheduled Sierra Camera Club meetings. So it won't interfere with things that we're already having. Hopefully one of these days we'll go back to meeting in person, and therefore we'll be back to the print meetings. But until then, I guess we can always use this time period to do these types of special programs. Tonight's theme, as you read, will be a master class, and we'll be hearing from 5 members who have scored a 13 for a specific image. The format will be to give for a few minutes to describe the experience of capturing the photo, what it took to bring it from in camera to the award-winning image that they had. After each presentation, we'll open up the meeting to the members, and the members will be able to question the photographer on any aspect of the photo, from where they took it, the environment, the camera, the equipment, and post-processing. Because it's a full program, we'll keep each photographer's presentation and Q&A to about 20 minutes. Hopefully that won't limit too much of the back and forth, but this is our first meeting with this format, so we'll see how it goes. As a reminder, we've muted everyone during each photographer's presentation, so please do not touch the mic icon or any of those things. The mic is off, so you shouldn't have to worry. Unless, of course, you see the mic on, and then don't be careful of what you say. If you don't have a microphone of your own, you can type in your question. It should be in the, is it in the chat tab? And the photographer will be able to see it and respond. We'll have a 5-minute intermission after the third presentation. Our photographers tonight, in the order of their presentation, will be Don Goldman, Pat Honeycutt, Joe Finkelman, Kathleen Grady, and Jan Lightfoot. And with that, I'll hand it over to Don.
Shall we try and do the share the screen thing?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's try that. Host disabled participant from sharing.
You may have to unshare your screen, Lucille. There you go.
There we go.
Okay.
Oops. Now I got everybody.
Mm-hmm. So now you should grab the screen, Don.
I'm going to click share screen. No, I keep getting the error host disabled participant.
Who can share? Doug, I think you've got to go back again. Let's see. Who can share?
Yeah, it's not letting me in.
How do I do that? Oh, we hadn't thought of that. Okay.
Hold on 1 second. Okay, try that now, Don.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Hold on. Doug, I'm going to look for you here. Doug Arnold.
He's got the
We got it. You should be able to see it now.
There we go.
Okay.
You see a nasty storm?
No,
No, I just
haven't
see it
started
black.
screen sharing.
I don't see it.
Screen sharing.
It says Don has started screen.
Zoom. Wow, Zoom quit on.
I see you, Don, but I don't see this started.
No, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it says, we are sharing Don's screen.
Have a green rectangle around it. Oh, I just got a prompt saying Zoom quit.
Oh,
Unlog.
Yeah, we only see a frozen image of one.
yeah. Yeah, you're frozen, Don.
Hmm.
You want to get in and out again? And in the meantime, Doug, I do have that's why I wanted it, a picture of Don's picture. Let's
Okay,
see.
you'll have to share your screen then, Lucille.
Okay. Mhm. Let's see. Open. And there. Okay.
There you
Does
go.
everybody see that?
See you.
I see everybody.
Because I see Dawn's picture only.
No,
No,
I
we
s-
just see you.
That's weird.
I see everybody.
I see Pat's laptop now.
Okay, now I do. Cancel. Do I have or who has the share screen?
I don't, and you should be able to share your screen.
Share. There we go. Can you see it now?
There it is.
I see it, yeah.
Okay. There. All right, so now I guess we have to wait for Dawn.
Dawn's been muted. Oh, Dawn's been muted.
Unmute him.
I don't know.
Let me find him. You can unmute him as well, Lucille.
What's that?
You can unmute anyone yourself because you're co-host.
Okay, hold on.
There we go. Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was muted. Okay, let's see if I can, have you allowed shared screen? Let me try that again.
Okay.
You cannot start screen, share screen while the other participant is sharing.
You have to stop sharing, Lucille.
There you go. All right, now I've stopped sharing and I'm seeing everybody's picture.
Me too.
So now, Doug, you should have control of the screen. There we go.
Done.
And it says Dawn has started screen share. There you go. Got it.
All right.
You see the Photoshop
Yes, we do.
storm and the panels on the right?
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Because I have no idea whether I'm sharing or not.
We
Okay,
see it.
all righty. Well, in conclusion,
We'll start the clock now.
okay. For whatever time I have left,
No, we'll give you money.
no, I'm kidding. This image is called Supercell. And what I'd like to talk about in the time I have is tell you a little bit about this storm chasing trip. This is where this image was taken on a professionally led storm chasing trip. A little bit about my goals for taking the photograph. And then, as you can see, there are 4 layers in Photoshop here. Can you see my cursor going?
Yes.
Yes.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what came out of the camera after I did some Lightroom adjustments, just simple adjustments. Found some noise in the image unexpectedly, and what I did with Topaz to get rid of the noise and do some contrast enhancements, and then this final image, there was a couple of other things I did to get from the Topaz to the final image here. So with that, this came from a trip that was 11 days long in 2019 with a group called Silver Linings Tours. It was called their Great Plains Tour. I think Cheryl and Gene Snyder and one other person, I can't remember, went on another company's storm chasing trip. That's Tempest. I was supposed to go on Tempest trip in May of 2020, but you know what happened to that.
Mhm.
And I'm scheduled to do that trip in May of this year if I can ever get vaccinated, which is another story altogether. Most of these tours are booked 2 years in advance. So you really have to be diligent in looking to see what's open and grab it. Even if you cancel, just grab it. And most of them are from experienced storm chasers. These people are repeat customers. They've done it before. And I was a newbie, so I didn't know what to expect because I've never seen a supercell. What I wanted to photograph from what I saw on the internet, these things are huge. They have all sorts of structures that you've probably never seen before. They give you kind of an ominous feeling, and I wanted to see whether I could capture that photographically. Lastly, I would say that later in the quote season, the storms move up from like the Oklahoma Panhandle up into the Great Plains states. And up in the Great Plains states, obviously you can see for many, many miles. It's flat, and the storms don't move as fast as they do earlier in the season, like in Texas and Oklahoma and in that area. And this was kind of a photographically oriented trip. So I'm going to start by showing you what came out of the camera. Oh, and by the way, I'm a Sony mirrorless shooter, Sony lenses, Sony cameras, and most everybody was using tripods. And generally hanging weights, below the center column, if they had one, because there's, as you might imagine, a lot of wind. So this is what came out of the camera. I don't know why it's so slow, but anyway, that's about a stop and a half underexposed. And you think, okay, well, it's a landscape shot. This thing is far away. You have all the time in the world to set up and shoot, but not quite. Because if the leader of the group who's watching this thing progress on his computer map, he was a drill sergeant, I think, in the Air Force, he said. He says, we're out. You grab your camera on the tripod. You don't even have time to collapse the tripod. You run to the van and you get out of there. Because it's not just the tornadoes that you're worried about, but this happened we came back a little bit later. Can you see that?
Whoa.
Those are about, golf ball size. So imagine you're out there with your baseball cap at your tripod and your camera, and these things start coming down. So it turns out that there are two types of people on these trips. The experienced people say, oh, wow, it's a supercell. And then newbies like me say, oh my God, it's a supercell. And you don't have a lot of time. You think you have a lot of time to set up. Well, my first image out of my camera kind of proves otherwise. So it's underexposed. I also noticed, see if I can click here. That's interesting. Anyway, I noticed that the horizon was not quite level, even though I had levels in my camera. This thing was happening pretty fast and I was pretty scared. So anyway, that's the way it came out of the camera. The next shot I'm going to show you is after straightening out the horizon and just some of the sliders in Lightroom. So we're making improvements. You can see small structures here. You can see whatever the heck this is. There's a lot of fine structure there. And this thing is huge. And it's moving. It's twisting. And the other thing that I noticed, because, oh yeah, it's hidden, of course. The other thing that I noticed, and I'm wondering if I zoom in, can you see the noise there now that I've zoomed in?
Yes.
Okay, so I have to get rid of that.
No. Okay.
Anybody have any questions so far?
Dawn,
Yeah.
I do. Is it mandatory? I mean, did you feel that you had to set up a tripod, or do you think this could have been handheld?
Well, you want to get as much detail as possible. I was shooting at 1/100th. I just don't think I'd get very good results by hand holding it. You could pump up the ISO and increase the speed, but then you get more noise.
Yeah.
So anyway, the next thing I do, and I do this for most of my photographs, especially nature ones of birds. This came out of Topaz Studio 2. And one of their modules is called AI Clear. And for low to moderate noise, my gosh, it's the best noise reduction software I've ever seen. And if you had a picture of a bird and you're clearing up a little noise, the feather detail, it also sharpens it up. So it's just absolutely amazing. Plus they have a whole bunch of other tools in there as well. So what I do is AI Clear almost all the time. That got rid of all that noise. There's a recover detail slider in it. You can bring back detail. You just have to play with it a little bit. And then they have something called precision contrast that has micro, low, medium, and high. So you can adjust the contrast at different scales, which I almost always do with my photographs. So this is kind of getting in good shape. I'm beginning to see some color here where I didn't see that originally. There's color. I don't know if you can see my cursor here. Let's see if I can change it. Yeah, you can see that there's color here. The structure has been brought out, so it's getting to what I really wanted it to be. Yes, that really is a red road there in the distance, but I really want to focus right in here. To me, this is where the action is. It's over a large expanse of land. Let's see what else. Yeah, but one of the things that we learned from, and that was repeated many times, I think I saw Richard Myrons in the group here. He's muted, so we can't hear him say, yeah, it's me. But anyway, remember last week when he talked about if there's something, let's say in the foreground or in the background, that's not adding any information to your image, get rid of it. Well, after putting this to bed for a couple of days, and looking at it again, I realized that down here, this lower portion of the foreground, I don't know why I needed it. It just doesn't seem to be adding any extra information. So I'm going to cut that out. And the other thing I noticed is I want people to look at the structure here. That's where the action is, especially the clouds coming down to the ground. But most every time I looked at it, I got drawn up here in the upper right corner in this bright area. So my eyes were kind of being taken out of the image. So I figured, all right, well, let's see if I crop that out, let's see if my eye stays in the middle of, the middle of the photograph. Because I like this coming down, I like this here. It's light, so your eyes are drawn to it. This is a bit bright, but not as bothersome way up in the corner as this. So we turn on the final one. You see the crop there, if it refreshes. You may disagree with that, but that's the way it kind of hit me. And, a bit of the foreground is cropped out, like I mentioned before, and that's pretty much the final image that I called Supercell.
Don,
So-
I've got a couple of questions here.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, Lori asked, why is there noise? What was your ISO?
The ISO was at about, this surprised me, the ISO was at about 600, I think, which for a Sony A7 Mark III, A7R Mark III, you shouldn't see any noise at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of surprised about that. Maybe it was, I had to bring it up a stop and a half, and in the dark areas, the noise just popped out. But I'm surprised at that too.
Okay, and
Didn't happen.
yeah, and Cynthia asked, what was your aperture?
I think it was f8.
Okay, are you finished with your presentation, and we can invite other questions?
Yes.
How close, from Richard Myron, how close is the final result to what you were seeing in the field?
The clouds are very close to what I saw in the field. I mean, I saw all this detail here. I saw this fine structure there. I saw the colors. I saw the structure. I think the only thing that I probably toned down is the grass there. I think that might be a little bit too saturated.
Yeah. And when you photograph, are you using a histogram? I know people are pro and con on it. Do you use a histogram to see if you're getting any blown out areas before?
With the mirrorless camera, since I'm seeing it in the electronic viewfinder all the time, I focus for the highlights. And the assumption is with cameras like the Nikon D850 and the Sony A7R series, it doesn't matter whether you're at ISO 100 or 500, there should be very little noise. So I use the histogram in real time when I'm composing, basically to expose for the highlights, not blow them out.
Okay, and Joe Finkelman was having a lot of problems, but he finally has sound.
Hello, Joe.
Any questions?
Don, I have one other question. You said you shot it at f8. Why not like f11 or f14, which is kind of the conventional aperture for landscapes?
Yeah, if I didn't feel I was going to die in the next 30 seconds, it's not really a very good excuse, but that's, I generally don't underexpose by that much, but it was just kind of the nerves of the moment, shall we say. Yeah, I would much rather be at f11.
I have one question, one maybe final question.
Sure.
I raised my hand, just so you know.
Yes, I see it.
Don, I think you mentioned that the original image was a little bit underexposed.
Yeah.
That may account for the additional noise that you had, just because it was underexposed.
I think so. It's a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah.
And
I saw the histogram in the viewfinder. I could have pumped up the ISO, or since I was on a tripod, go a little bit slower, but realize this isn't a static situation. These clouds are moving.
Right.
And so I didn't want to go too slow and get a, more blurred effect. So not only was this thing rotating, but it was moving, I think, left to right in this frame. So you're kind of a little bit constrained about, going, you don't want to have a waterfall effect, at an eighth of a second, because I want to see the structure here. I'm not sure I answered your question yet.
No. Mine? No, you did.
Okay.
And Bob Adler wanted to know which tour you took. I think it was Silver Linings tour.
Yes, Silver Linings in July of 2019, and I'm scheduled to go in May on a Tempest tour out of Denver this late May. But that's really going to depend. Even if I get the vaccine, I'm just not sure I want to get on an airplane for 3 hours and travel to Denver. So it's kind of up in the air.
Yeah. But if you look online, Bob, you'll find it under Silver Linings Tour.
And Tempest is the other one.
All right.
And I don't want to take up too much time, but it's really, things change every minute there. When we arrived and got our introductory lecture from the leader that evening, before that we launched the trip, he said, we have to get up very early. This is in Denver. Is this in Denver? Yeah, this is in Denver, Colorado. Said, because tomorrow we're going to be in Montana. And
Wow.
we were. Yep. And then we went to the Dakotas and said, no, we're going to Wyoming. So and it was an 11-day trip. We only saw these big storms the last 2 days. The first 8 days, nada.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Must make you feel, can you imagine if you didn't have anything and you paid all that money for it? Ouch.
People have gotten skunked.
Ugh.
Yep. No
Well,
guarantees. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody, for good questions.
You made it under the limit. Congratulations. Okay, now, I guess, Doug, you want to hand it back to me?
I will stop sharing.
Don has to stop sharing first.
Okay, very good.
You should be able to share your screen, Lucille.
Okay. So now we're going to hear from Pat Honeycutt as soon as I put my, where'd it go? Screen back up? No. Let's see, I'll put this up. Okay, so there we go. All right, now I'm going to put up Pat's pictures.
4, the original one.
Right, you want me to do the original first?
Well, I'm not sure. What do you think?
All right, whatever. Let's see, I'll just open them both and then, there we go. That's the original. And hold on a moment. So where's the share?
Anything but the other people.
Okay, let's see there and share. There we go. Okay, is everybody seeing it now?
Yes.
Now, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. So the story behind this image is on March 2018, I took a dream trip to Patagonia with 3 girlfriends. And the highlight was the W Trek from Eco Camp in Torres del Paine National Park, which is the Chilean side of Patagonia. So we had a 4-day trek. And then the last day, the guides took us out this area called the Eastern Lakes, where we were looking for a sign of puma. So we did see the flamingos, but they were so far away that it was like a pink line on the horizon. And there was a National Geographic group searching for the pumas. We're doing a special documentary about them. So I'm not, this was 3 years ago, and I wasn't as studied or studious as Dawn about setting up. I didn't have anything in particular in mind. I just thought this would be a good candid shot of the other people on the trip, because there were 12 guests and the 2 guides. So the weather is always a big issue down there, weather and wind. And the weather started to clear, so we could just begin to see the tops of the towers in the background there. So anyway, I just snapped it. And then when I was looking for an image for the travel competition, I decided to play with this one. So let's see. The camera, we had to travel light. We were gone for 3 weeks, and I took a carry-on size suitcase that I checked, and I had a 30-liter backpack, and I kind of wrapped up my gear in that. So I was using at the time a Nikon D610 with the 24 to 85 f3.5 to 4.5 lens. And I also took a Coolpix P7800, which is a really good camera for hiking because it has a zoom lens and you can shoot in RAW. But those images, I don't think, come out quite as well, except for the bracketed ones and the panos. So anyway, and I did take the Manfrotto B-Free tripod because I had to have something super light, but that's all I took as far as camera equipment. So I shot this at 66 millimeters, 1/60th of a second at f16 ISO 100. Now, back in that day, that's when I thought f16 was what you should use for this kind of landscape with foreground and background in it. So now I'd probably use more like f11 to capture something like this. The processing, I learned how to use Lightroom last spring. And so my basic workflow would be, first of all, to do the lens correction. And then I change the profile usually to Adobe Landscape and do spot removal. And then I play with the sliders, and I start at the bottom with the blacks and the whites and work my way up to exposure and contrast. And then I go back down to dehaze, and I play with the clarity and or the texture. I rarely do anything with the white balance or vibrance and saturation. So then the next thing for me would be to click on the black and white to see if that has any potential. And in this case, well, I probably would have gone through some of the presets in Lightroom with the black and white and not been too happy with it. So then I jumped over to Silver Effects, which I have in as a plugin for Photoshop. So why don't you flip over to that one, Lucille?
There you go. Do you see that?
No.
No.
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So, I don't have the exact steps I did for this one. So obviously I cropped it, and unfortunately I had to crop out one of my friends over on the right. But I just thought the colors in the jackets, and et cetera, and the foreground just to me were distraction. And I liked it much better, excuse me, in monochrome. And by cropping it, I also kind of brought in the mountains a little bit closer. So really, and just kind of play with it until it came to a point where I liked it. And that was my determination on what to send in for this competition. And I guess in a way, a 13 is in the eye of the judge. And I was pretty happy that this one made it as a 13, but that's, I was thinking of it more as something I would keep as a reminder of the trip. That's all I have to say.
Okay. When you actually focus, were you using manual focus or aperture priority automatic?
Oh, that was 3 years ago. It was, that's a good question. And I'm not really sure. I might have been using the manual focus on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when I do an f/16, I'm always nervous about it because you will get that diffraction. It's not always that sharp, but in this case it was. And so usually when I go to a manual, and especially with the Sonys, you get that when you're doing a manual, it gives you that zoom, so you can really look to make sure everything is sharp, and that works pretty well, as long as you're you're looking at about a third of the way in.
Right, right.
But no, that's incredible shot. Any
No,
other
thank you.
questions? I don't see any.
Do the W track, it's quite strenuous, but you should stay at Eco Camp in Torres del Paine. It's quite luxurious for that particular area. It's just, well, I think Jan's been to Patagonia.
Yeah. It's
Jan, you had a question?
fabulous.
You're
Okay, thank you.
sure. Jan, your hand is up, or did you?
Oh, no, that was when Dawn was,
Oh,
I
okay.
should have, sorry. Let's see, I'll back that out.
All right. And I think, Pat, you mentioned that it wasn't specifically a photo tour. So
Correct.
did you
It was-
have limitations as to how long you could stick around to wait for that picture, or was it everybody back on the bus?
No, because it was just a small group, so we could take as much time as we wanted. Part of it was just waiting for the clouds to part. That's weather is always an issue down there, and it rained a lot on our trek, so I had to make sure I kept my camera equipment bundled up. And I pulled out the larger camera when it was safe to do so. Otherwise, I was using the smaller one.
And the I don't know what month it was, but knowing that it's reversed from what it is up here, looks like some people are cold, but they're not that bundled up. So do you remember what the
It was in March, which is down there. And well, when the sun came out, it was pretty pleasant. And if it wasn't windy, it was pretty pleasant. But we were pretty bundled up. I had to buy some extra clothes when we were in Argentina because I knew we were going to be colder when we got this far south.
The most shocking thing is that none of them had the camera.
I love it in black and white.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You chose the right, yeah, the right, whatever. You did well. You did well.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Pat,
Pam.
did you submit that trip for one of the travel exhibits or competitions?
Say that again?
Yeah, did you submit that trip or pictures from that trip for one of the travel competitions? Because I would have loved to have seen some of the other pictures from here.
Well, you mean in addition to this one?
Yeah,
Well, I've submitted a couple for landscape. One was of a glacier and one was of actually, we hiked up to a lake that's at the base of those towers. And we got lucky again that day because it was cloudy when we got there and the sun came out. Anyway, I can send those off to you, Lucille, if you'd like to see them.
oh yeah, but I think, I don't know what the other pictures look like, but it's rare that we get travel sequences from Patagonia. It's usually Myanmar.
Oh, I see, as a sequence.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
no, I haven't done that as a sequence.
Well, you ought to
That's an
consider-
idea. Okay.
Anyway, any other questions? Nate? Going once, going twice? Okay. Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
And next is Joe Finkelman. Joe, are you there?
Actually, Lucille, I think he's here, but he's not showing a microphone turned on. I've sent him a couple messages, but I don't know what the problem might be.
Oh dear.
Yes, he seems to have sound now, but
He can hear us, I guess. Maybe he can use the chat to tell me if he is able to speak. If not, I don't know what we can do.
I told him you could go on to the next.
Yeah. Does he want to chat with us here to let us know if he can talk? Is he trying to talk?
He says he can hear, but he still doesn't have a microphone.
He's muted.
No, he's not
Yes.
muted, Don. He doesn't even have a microphone that's showing up.
Oh,
Oh,
Dear. Okay, well, I guess we'll have to move him over to the next one. The only thing that would work is if he were able to get onto Zoom with an iPhone and he could talk through the iPhone, and we have his pictures, so we can work with him on that. But while he's trying to figure that out, why don't we go to Kathleen Grady? Kathleen, are you ready? Kathleen? Hello?
Muted. I've got
Oh,
her.
okay. I was muted, so I am, yes, I'm ready.
Okay, let's see here. And okay, which one would you like to open first? This is your PSD, and this is your original.
Well, let's start with that one and then I'll show the one that was wrong. But that way, yeah, why don't you go back to the finished product?
Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Hi, thank you, everybody, for joining in, and
Yeah.
it's an honor to be here. And I took this picture in Oaxaca in October of 2019. And how I ended up there, a friend contacted me about a month prior to it and asked me if I wanted to do a yoga retreat with her and go to Oaxaca. And I said, I would love to go to Oaxaca, but I'm not going to go down there to do yoga. I can do yoga at home. I go, I'm going to take my camera. So I did a little research and I found a photographer who, her name's Marcella Daboata, I think I'm saying that right. She's worked with Mary Ellen Mark, and she's, her approach to photography is to tell a story, and she'll work on a project for 2 to 3 years before it's complete. So she said she'd work with me, and she took me out to the villages. And this was the first day that I went out. I went out to the areas called San Antonio Castella Velasco, and it's located in central Oaxaca. It is 28 miles from Oaxaca City. and Oaxaca City is the state capital. And we went to Don Jose Garcia and Teresita's home. And this is Don Jose, and he's quite well known. And he's blind. And when I was there, it's just a wonderful place. I first started in the garden, and he was working on the patio when I got there. And the garden is full of terracotta statues, similar to like what he's looking at here. And so I could have spent the whole day just in the garden. And I got some pictures of him working some clay. And at first I didn't realize he was blind. And as I was photographing him, I noticed he didn't really pay too much attention to me. And then as I got up close and was trying to get his face, I realized that he wasn't really looking at the clay. And I started thinking he was just visually impaired. And so as it turns out, I found out later that he was blind, and he started losing his eyesight in his 50s. In his early 50s, he was very visually impaired, but he decided that this is his passion and he was going to figure out how to do it. So he does it primarily now by touch and sound. And of course, he's got a family that's very supportive. His wife is also an artist, and she also does sculptures. And if you look behind his back, and in the back there, that's some Teresita's work. Now I cropped this down. There is some sculptures that were behind him, and I believe those were her work. But when I walked into the studio where he was, this is his studio, this is not the patio, and that open door is the door that I think when people come to buy stuff, they use to deliver, to put the stuff in the trucks or whatever they come to pick the stuff up in. And when I walked into the studio, I was more kind of focusing on the statues and stuff. And I noticed the photographer was talking to him, and he was sitting on this stool, and I had no idea what they were talking about because they were speaking in Spanish. And I went on the other side of him to photograph because the light coming in was, it was, in some ways it was better. It felt like it was better to me. And, but when I took the picture, I noticed that the background was very distracting. So I came around, and the photographer kind of stepped out of the way. I think she saw what I saw. And I saw this, this picture to me is all about the emotion and the connection of the artist with his work. And if you look at the neck on the little terracotta or whatever kind of clay they use, his signature's on there. And so it was one of those pictures where, you know, they talk about decisive moment. It was very quick. I had set the camera up for aperture priority when I was inside. When I was outside, I had it to 5.6, and inside I had it to 5.4. I had a floating ISO, and I set my shutter speed not to go below 1/60th of a second. And I knew that light was going to be a problem. And I didn't want to expose for that because I wanted the detail of him. Now, Lucille, go back to the original one so you can see how I changed it. Because I did, yeah, now this is the original. This is just right out of RAW, not nothing done to it. And I felt that the verticals needed to be straightened out a little bit, and I wanted to crop that edge off, and I wanted to bring up some of the shadows. And I did try to burn down that the whiteness that feels really blown out to me. And when I first looked at it, I thought it was just a complete failure. But the more I played with it, what I did is I burned it in, and then RAW, I brought down all the highlights so they weren't red. You know how when you work your pictures, I try to get rid of all the highlights, and then I try to bring up a little bit of the shadows so I have a little bit of black. Okay, so you can go back to the other one now. And, but
Hmm.
you know, the night I presented this, I thought, well, you know, I'm going to see what the judge says. And I know they're going to complain about the highlights and I'm probably going to get a 10. But what was great about it, the person who was judging it is a pictorial photographer. And she saw what I saw, which is the emotion. And so I think it works. I think it tells a story. And a little bit more about him. He has 2 children, and the whole family is involved in this craft, this art. They have kilns in their backyard. The backyard is like a little museum. And his daughter, Sarah, actually now works very closely with him. And so they all, you don't need to zoom in. But
I wanted to see how sharp it was.
Oh, okay. Well, it's only 100 DPI.
Yeah.
So I, you know, didn't feel that it was that. Anyhow, never mind. So the camera that I used was a mirrorless crop sensor. And so at f4.0, which was the aperture, which is really more like about a f6 when you're using a crop sensor. So the background with those little statues in the back, I think I might have burned them down a little bit more. But I'm happy with the picture. And I don't know, anybody have any questions? And this was done in the travel competition. This was the single, you know, it was a single series.
Yeah. What program did you use to make the changes? Just Lightroom, or did you use?
No, I used Photoshop. I first opened it in RAW, and then I have some plugins that I think I used Nik to do some of the burning in on the edges, and I didn't do a lot. What I try to do when I photograph is I try to get the picture in the camera, and you know, I might correct the horizon line and stuff like that, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on the computer. You know, if I can get as much in the camera, I'm happy, because if I spend too much time on the computer, my neck starts hurting. So, and I'd much rather be out photographing. So now on my screen right now, this is looking a little cool, but on another screen that I have looked at it, it has a little bit warmer feel to it. And so I didn't really spend a lot of time, Lucille. I cropped it. I had one other layer other than the original layer, and I adjusted the original layer in RAW, opened it up, and then added the plugin layer. And then for this presentation, I flattened that. And so I brought up, you know, some of the shadows and tried to bring down some of the highlights.
Mhm.
And I was pleased that I got a 13. But I think a lot of other judges probably would have given it, they would have not liked that white background. But I think it works. I think it adds kind of a mystery. The whiteness of the sculpture, to me, makes it it has an artistic feel to it.
Mhm.
For me, you know, that's. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering if you had thought about in Adobe Camera Raw of doing a localized tonal changes here. So keep all this white, but just because you did do it, you can definitely see there. But I didn't know if you could have made this a little bit sharper.
No, I didn't. I thought about it, and then I started thinking about how much time it was going to take me, and I thought it worked. I could have burned it down. There's a lot I could have done to it. And and I actually thought if I turned it into something, to me, it's borderlining for me a documentary picture, kind of like a, like I think of as street photography, even though this really isn't street photography. But I did think that, I actually think if I turned it into a pictorial, I would probably put some texture in there and then do more stuff to it. But the other thing I did is, when you asked me to present a picture, I actually converted this to black and white. And I think in black and white, it's, to me, it's a stronger picture. But I love black and white. But I hadn't done that for the camera club. And, for the night that I presented it, that I got the 13, this was the one. So I thought I should present that one. But I've taken quite a few of my Oaxacan pictures and I've converted them to black and white. And they are very, just the feel of them are very different when you convert. And a lot of people say Oaxaca's all about the color, but I think when you're doing people and portraits and stuff like this, I don't think it's about the color. I think it's more about the emotion behind the picture and the I just love the relationship with him in this sculpture that he did. And he's a very interesting character. I was watching him and he's very quiet, and his wife helps him move around, and when he's working a piece of play, I mean, you can just it's all about the feel and the touch of the, and I think he started doing clay work when he was a child. So I think it's a second like sense for him. He has a connection with it, and it's I think it tells the story a little bit.
Yeah. Was he was completely blind, correct?
Well, he started losing his eyesight when he was I think it was in his 40s, and he did try to get medical treatment. I did a little bit of research on him because the photographer, when we left the place, she goes, "Were you aware that he was blind?" I said, "Well, yeah, I figured it out." And she never told me until after we left. And I didn't think too much more about it, but I did do a little research on him, and and it was, what I read was that he's, at the age 50, he was pretty much, he was pretty much blind then. I think he was having, seeing shadows and lights and stuff like that. And I read somewhere that it was glaucoma. And he did try to get medical treatment, but the treatments that they gave him, I have a feeling he probably let it go too long. Mexico is, they're indigenous people. They live out in a village, and, they don't have the same kind of medical care that we have, and there are a lot of Mexicans that do have that kind of care. But I suspect that, but I'm guessing, and I read that by the age of 50, he was needing, a lot of help, and he knew that he wasn't going to give up his passion. And so I think in a lot of these villages, they have extended families, and they support one another, and they all do the same kind of work. So it's a family business, and he's very well known, and has done, apparently he's got work that's all over the world from what I've read. But he's 73 now, 73, or yeah, I think he was 72 when I was there, and that was about a year and a half ago. And I was hoping to go back this fall. His wife's a little bit younger than him, and it's a really interesting place, and they have people come and take lessons that are in the village. So while I was there was a whole group of guys that came, and they were all sitting around this table playing with clay. And, it was interesting. I mean, to see these kind of Mexican macho guys playing with clay.
Yeah. Well,
It was
thank
fun.
you.
It was a fun place. I could have hung out there all day.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kathleen. Now,
Thank you.
we're going to take a 5-minute break. Joe, if you want to give us a call in that 5 minutes, maybe we can still hook you up by phone. My number is 916. Oh, there we go. 916-342-1868. And maybe there's a way we can do it. If not, Jan will be the next person on. And we'll go to that in about 5 minutes. Okay.
Oh, you know what? Can I say one thing? I read one of the questions here. Somebody said something about a fill light.
You know, I'm
and,
not getting those questions.
Yeah,
So
it's
thank
in
you.
it. Yeah, there's quite a few in the chat thing here.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead then. We've got time. What is it?
Yeah, no, he's not at all bitter. The whole family was just a very loving people. But one of the questions was tempted to use fill light to deal. I actually did not have a flash with me. The following day, I went and shot some weavers in another village, and I actually did use a fill flash on those because I was shooting out from the patio. But with him, it was, it was like one of those things, you're just there and you grab the shot and you make it work. And but yeah, a fill light would have been beautiful.
Okay, how do I?
Just scroll up.
Okay, before you answer any of the other ones, let me give Joe my number again. It's 916-342-1868. Okay, all right, go for it now, Kathleen. Sorry, I didn't see those.
Oh, it's okay. And then there was I don't know if it was a question, but somebody made a comment about getting him to pose. And now I couldn't communicate with him at all. He was just sitting there. I think what was going on was Marcella was talking to him, and I just kind of walked over and I asked her to step aside. And I don't even know, well, he probably knew I was there. He's probably got really good hearing. But I just really just took a few pictures and then moved on. So it was just like really quick. I don't think there's any other questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So now we'll take 5 minutes and Joe, call me again. I inadvertently hung up on you. There we go.
Major news media outlet in Silicon Valley. See him?
Hi. Yes. So what we can do is, can you get onto the?
We want my man Earl Grey. And a man. A tall man. You deserve it. Wow. It really takes guts speaking truth to power like that.
Yeah, I'm proud of him. Although I do feel like a little bit of an idiot because he didn't try to tell me there was more to the problem with the chirp and I just wasn't hearing him. The PSA is right, don't do drugs.
Wait, you did drugs?
And I may or may not have done them with the CEO of SparkPoint.
Danny Michael Davis gave you drugs?
Actually, I gave him drugs. Don't ask. And now he texts me all the time. He thinks we're besties. Oh, he's texting me right this second. He's spiraling so bad about Simon's press conference, he just bought a private jet for the African Children's Choir.
Oh boy. Honestly, Max, we should hit him up to invest in the company. I mean, there's no one easier to shake down than a well-intended billionaire with a white heel.
No, that's Monday. Somebody is not on mute.
No money? Last time I checked, we didn't have a plethora of options.
That's a terrible idea. He's clearly in the donating mood, and
Somebody's got their
I would say that
TV
your
on in the
business
background.
Yeah.
embodies everything he's feeling guilty about.
How could he refuse us? Honestly, I dare him to.
They probably can't
Come
hear
on,
you,
we
so-
can't pitch the founder of one of the
No, it
largest tech
doesn't
companies
say
in the
that
world
he's
our
done it.
scrappy little spin on dining out.
But you can. You guys are in Denny's
Just
calendar
because you're not
tomorrow,
having it or
11/17.
Are you serious? What? That was fast. Sweet
Lori Friedman, do you have your TV on?
Okay, yeah, we can do
Not her
this.
pet.
In only 5 minutes. Honey, we can do anything in any amount of minutes. We just need to get that rich man to listen to us. Listen. All right.
Yeah, because it doesn't show up on the little screen. If you can, yeah, if you can see the screen at all, the Zoom screen. Okay. You can see your name and you can see a little camera.
As I told her, you need to click down on the mute,
What's that?
click down on that mute, okay? And then to start the difference.
For him?
Yeah, no, you can't, but he should.
Yeah,
Lucille,
yeah.
I stepped away for a minute, but I'm going to send Joe a chat message with a number he can dial into.
He doesn't have an iPhone.
Oh, oh.
But if he looks at that mute button above, he may be
He's
able,
talking to you.
Well, I already
Travis,
tried
okay.
allowing him to unmute himself.
See.
And
Oh, wait a second. Now, it says that now I can unmute.
no.
Okay.
So whatever you did, you're fine.
I can hear him.
Yay.
I think that's coming from his phone, not from the.
No, it's, I don't know where it's coming from, but we're hearing it through the computer.
Oh, good.
Hold on. We did. Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me now on the microphone?
Yes.
Yes. Yay.
Wow. Thank you, Zen. I'm going to hang up on you then.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I just hung up on you.
Yeah, you hung up on you.
Yeah.
Oh, man. What a night.
Okay. So are we done with our 5 minutes? Are we ready to roll? Okay. Wow.
Okay.
So exciting.
Ready to rock and roll.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what had happened was that I updated the computer, but I guess there were other things that needed to be updated.
Well, we're fine now. So let's get you rolling here. Would you like us to look at your color one first?
Well, I don't really care how you want to do that. That's just this is the raw.
Okay. So why don't you start? Tell us about your photo.
Oh, okay. I thought we had a break. No?
We're done.
Okay. I've been working on a series seriously for about 50 years, but for the last 10 years, I've been very concentrated on it. And I've been photographing photographers. And so I have a show that was supposed to be last year in April, but instead it's been moved up to 2022 in April at the Yellow Arts 65 Gallery. It'll be my 104th exhibition. But I'm really fascinated by photographers and the story that goes on when a photographer is actually anticipating the moment and then the exact moment and then sometimes the reaction after the moment. That whole little time period is very, very short. It also happens incredibly quickly. But while I'm there and I'm, hanging out in different environments, there's all kinds of other stories that go on. And so I generally work 2 or 3 different opportunities at any given moment. And this young girl was on a tour with her parents, and if she could have been any more bored with what the adults were doing, she probably would have fallen asleep. So instead, she started to dance. And I work with 2 cameras on a chest harness, and they're always set. So this particular thing. When I'm outside photographing, I shoot at ISO 400, and I do aperture priority. In this case, it was f5.6, and I shot with a 55-200 zoom on this camera, and then the other camera is set with a normal lens. And this is at 95 millimeters at 150th of a second f5.6. But the pictures occur, as you probably anybody who's done street work knows, it happens within a split second. So I can't fuss with the equipment at all. And sometimes I can't even move precisely into position. So in this case, I had to crop this particular picture. This is the raw image. This is what it looks like coming out of the camera. The only thing that I do in Adobe Camera Raw is I adjust the color temperature. And generally, I don't have to do much of anything else. Sometimes I do open up the shadows. And in this particular one, I opened it up quite a lot. And that's pretty much it. And then I take it into Photoshop and I do my standard processing. My processing takes about 20 minutes total from download to output. And in every picture I do, except for portraiture, I build a separate layer in black and white. And so all of my pictures are in effect are taken for black and white with very, very few exceptions. And in this particular case, now I'm going to back up. Generally, what I do with that black and white layer is I just keep it in luminosity mode, and so it works on tonal values only. But in this particular case, I put it in normal mode, and so I turned it into a black and white. But virtually all of my work could go black and white or color pretty easily. So that's it right there. I process for mid-tone contrast. I set black points. I think I did a really tight crop, and then I straightened the picture up, of course, and that was it. It's not none of my processing is all that complicated.
And
So
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, there we go. You said that you work in luminosity, and that's something I do not do. It's a pretty elaborate process, isn't it? I mean, you've got to work in channels and.
No, not at all. No, this is just, I showed you this.
No.
And I even gave you a handout.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, in Photoshop, it's, I make a separate layer. So there's only 2 pixel layers, the original raw image, well, not really raw image, demosaic image. And I do my lens adjustment in that foundational thing. And I also adjust shadows and highlights in image adjustments. And that's really important because it spreads the tonal values out. You know, one of the weaknesses of the digital capture is that it has a seamless middle tone. So it's kind of muddy. Well, it's not kind of muddy, it's really muddy. So shadows and highlights right off separates out the distinctions of your values 2 through 9. And then I make a duplicate layer and I rasterize it so that it doesn't contain, it's all set up without having, if I take it away, it doesn't affect the foundational layer. And then in that layer, I go into, in this case, Nik and Silver Efex Pro, and I build a black and white layer. It's just like a black and white image. If you put it in luminosity, you know where the modes are in your processing. If you put it in luminosity mode, then it literally sits underneath the color. If you put it in normal mode, it sits on top of the color and becomes a black and white image like this.
Mhm.
So that's all the modes are there. You're not in channels. It's not complicated. you got to put it in one mode or another. It's going to be in a mode. So
Mhm.
you can always
Yeah,
come
so
over and I
you
can show you
You mean
again.
the blend modes and you go all the way down to luminosity? Is that the one you're using?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you start up at normal and it goes, past overlay, and then it goes into color, hue, and saturation, and black and luminosity, which is black and white.
Mhm.
And that's it. I think luminosity is on the very bottom.
Right.
I'd have to look.
Yeah. So what was she dancing to? What is everybody looking at?
I'm sorry now, what's that?
What is everybody
didn't-
looking at and why is she dancing?
Well, she's dancing because she's bored and hopes that the adults finally get on with it. This is in the courtyard of the Bodleian Library at the University of Oxford, and it was tour week. That means that students from all over the UK and the Commonwealth and international students, their families come in and they are taken on tours of the various colleges in the Oxford University system, and then people decide if they're going to apply to a specific college. So it literally closes the town down, the city down, and there's just thousands of people. So this was a fairly beautiful open courtyard that was built in the 17th century, and it was just full of people. There was hundreds of people continually going on tour through this courtyard, and my wife wanted to actually tour the library, and I'm not allowed in libraries because I start to go into heat over books. It's very embarrassing. I'm banned in several libraries now, but nevertheless, so I stayed in the courtyard working on my photographer's portfolio and any opportunities that also occurred. When you're shooting in these kind of environments, I don't know if you have a second to actually respond to this. So you have to anticipate a lot of the stories and watch them develop and set yourself up to do this. But even then, it'll just be, oh, there's a shot. And, you can't fuss. You have to just, everything has to be set. In the old days, I used to pre-focus manually. With modern equipment, I actually use autofocus. I feel so decadent doing that.
And when you use autofocus, are you doing a point or an averaging meter?
Oh no, I do everything on a single point autofocus. I don't like the all those focal points. They don't necessarily know what I'm going to be wanting, so I just set this up. I generally set the point in the frame how I'm going to probably compose things, and then and I do all this long before any pictures happen. And I have a Fuji system, and I find that the center weighted general averaging will always give me a literally full capture. I really cram a lot of light into every one of these exposures. I sometimes actually have to pull the highlights down because I've crammed so much light in there, but I like lots of light on my capture. I don't have noise problems. I can shoot these images on either my Nikon D800 or on the Fuji at 800 ISO and have no noise at all. And even at 1600, I have to set my noise program to the lowest setting.
So what f-stop did you use?
I'm sorry?
What f-stop did you use?
This was 5.6.
5.6.
On the long lens, I shoot it at f4 and f5.6. And on the short lenses, I shoot generally at f4.
That's good.
What's your favorite focal length, Joe, to use for street photography?
When I do street photography, I'm working with two cameras. I'll either have on one camera, depending on the situation, a 14 millimeter which is a 96 degree angle of view, like a 20 millimeter on a full frame, or I'll use a 27 millimeter, which is a short normal. It's the equivalent of about a 42 millimeter on a full frame.
I think it's 47.
No, it's 42. Trust me. 27, yeah, it's 42. And then I'll use a long lens, usually the 55-200 or a 100-400, which is unusual, but I do work with it.
So then you're pretty far away. This person didn't know, this little girl didn't know she was being shot.
I'm pretty close because this is at 95 millimeters, which is the equivalent of about 140 millimeter on a full frame.
Okay.
I'm probably 15, 20 feet. I'm not, it's pretty close. I don't really like to interact with the subject because generally speaking, people become very self-conscious and they're not giving me what I'm looking for. They're not giving me their genuine emotions. And so I generally work with a relatively longer lens. The 100-400 is an extreme. I hardly ever really use that. It's also a very heavy lens. But the 55-200 is really light and, it's fast.
I don't see any questions. Do any people have questions?
I'm either so thorough or so boring that no one has a...
Not for me. Like I said, unless anybody has any questions, can I?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Joe, I love your black and white. The black and white to me is just, it's gorgeous. And now when you did this, do you do two cards? Do you have like a raw card and then do you set up your Fuji with Acros? Because this kind of looks like Acros to me. The simulator that they use with Fuji.
Yeah. I'm actually, because I've been writing articles a lot lately, or the last couple of years, I've been actually thinking that I will actually shoot a JPEG and see what I can get out of it. But I would say I've never done that. So no, if I use a second card for a JPEG, it's strictly a reference so that in my computer, when I'm actually looking at the files, I can actually see what the darn pictures are. But I would never.
When I was down in Oaxaca, I had two cards and I shot raw and I shot high resolution JPEG, fine. And I'll tell you, I put the raw next to the JPEG, and I was shooting with a Fuji X-T2. I could barely tell the difference on my computer. I mean, the JPEGs on these newer cameras are fabulous.
Yeah, and, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Try it on yours because I know you're shooting Fuji also, and I think you might, just play around with Acros because this kind of has that look to it that, that is like a Fujifilm Acros film. It's beautiful.
The problem that I have with JPEGs, besides throwing away, like most of the information, which just offends me somehow, is that the middle tone contrast in a JPEG sucks. It's just so flat and so muddy that to my taste, it just doesn't, I just can't stand it. I look at a lot of work and when I can just almost always tell a JPEG. So that's why I haven't done that, but I'm going to try. To be fair, I'm going to try.
Make sure you set the camera. Make sure you set the camera to the highest and fine, and it's a pretty big set of data that you'll find. I mean, I thought it was I think it's interesting just to see that difference because, I used to shoot Nikon and they, you really had to, the JPEGs were crap. I mean, they were just.
Nikon JPEGs are crap, yeah.
But the sensors were totally different. You know, the newer sensors they're absolutely amazing.
Well, I'm going to investigate that because that's an article that I'll be developing for May or June, and so I'll be doing a bunch of research on it. We'll see.
Okay, we're gonna have to cut it short, but let me just say that I've talked with Joe before on a personal level. There's an awful lot of information. He's been in the business a long time, and hopefully, maybe for a future one of these, we can just have Joe talking about what he's done and the kind of techniques he uses, especially in the genre of street photography, which is something I never quite understood, but I know I can learn a lot from it. From Joe. So I'm glad we were finally able to hook you up.
God, thank you. Yeah, me too.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you. Now we're going to, as our last presenter, we're going to hear from Jan Sharpless. And hers was that creative piece that was it the last one, Jan? That we saw? Hold on a second. Yeah. Open. Here we go. That one.
Just, yeah, and show the first, well, it doesn't matter.
That one? Tell me which one you want. We can do that.
Well, let's start with the final result, and then we can talk about the rest of it. So.
Okay, go for it.
So.
Okay.
Kind of, I've been sort of doing a lot of composite work lately for the last year or two, I guess, and I really find it fascinating. And so kind of what I've shifted to is going from composites now to more of a conceptual photography. And basically, the idea is that conceptual photography is all about using images to convey ideas and symbols and themes. And so I think the hardest part about whether it's composite photography or conceptual photography in general is figuring out what you're going to do with it. Do you have those images that you can work with to convey your idea or get across what it is you want to say in an image? And I use all my own images. I don't use any, other stock art or clip art or anything like that. So, my own creative library is, I add to it almost every week. But whether I use those images or not, who knows? But so what I like to do often is I like to peruse the internet and look for something that might inspire me. And for this image, that's basically what I did. I saw something that that inspired me to think about what I wanted to convey, the idea I wanted to convey. And so I felt that it would work. I felt like I had the images that would work to make this image, and so that's what I did. So this is the final result. And Lucille, if you go back to the first one, let's start with the trees. So this image was taken, I knew that I wanted to use a winter scene because that's half the battle right there, is using a scene that as a background that kind of has the same idea you want to get across. So I wanted to have that winter theme. And what I did is I basically cloned out all of the water that you see here in the foreground, and I just cloned it out with white. And I had to do a little tricky maneuvers in there with the trees that you see in the background, because I didn't want those to kind of show through. So as a result, after everything was sort of cloned and, you know, whitened up a little bit, I then took this particular image into I was working in Photoshop, and I took it into blur, and then I went down to the motion blur. And so you can, with the motion blur, you can change the direction however you want. You can go vertical, you can go horizontal, you can go 45 degrees, you know, you can go any direction you want. Well, I wanted vertical. I wanted those trees to have like a motion to them. And so once I had that in place, and if you go back to the original, you can kind of see that, you know, the trees look a little bit sparse in places. If you go back to the original on that. Yeah. And so I played around with different, you know, trees and that sort of thing, but this is what I ultimately decided to use. And then I had to find the person or the subject. And so I remembered that when I was in Greece last year, I got up real early. I was on the island of Mykonos, and I got up real early. And when you walk the streets, I think anywhere, whether it's Greece or Mykonos or wherever it is, you're not going to have the crowds. And so, as a, you know, this is what I happened to see that nobody else would have seen that day, because otherwise the streets would be just full of people. And so getting this kind of shot would have been impossible. And I spied this little old woman walking with her cane, and she has her hand behind her back, and she's carrying a little purse. And she just walked, and she would stop and kind of look up at maybe the neighbors. I don't know. She probably knew everybody that lives here. And I was just very intrigued with her, and just followed her for as far as I could without being obtrusive or anything like that. I don't think she ever knew that I was following her. And so this is the image that I decided to use for this winter scene. And it was pretty easy to actually cut her out in Photoshop, because her dress and her clothing is so dark compared to the white walls in the image itself. And so it was actually quite easy to cut out. So I put her in the image. I sized her to kind of the perspective I wanted. I tried different perspectives. I tried her a little bit further back, walking into the woods further back and more into the woods, just different perspectives. And I settled on this one. And I had to do a little work on her feet so that it would look like she was walking through the snow. I kind of had to make sure that she felt like she wasn't pasted into the image. And so I had to make that look real. I had to gray her black a little bit. I had to lighten the black a little bit. And so the final image in my mind ended up, I think a long time about titles, because for me, the titles are really important in a creative image. And I wanted, I didn't want to have a really depressing kind of theme. I wanted it to be symbolic. And so I finally settled on the season of winter. And that can sort of be, open to interpretation in a lot of different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean death. It could be, the winter of winter can be beautiful, right? So in my mind, the fact that seasons change, and we always have winter. I just felt it was appropriate for this image. So, so that's what it's called. It's called the season of winter. And for me, it has a meaning. It means something to me. I would like to do this image again and perhaps work it a little differently and see what I come up with. But it's a fascinating kind of subject, and it's something that once you settle on a theme like this, you can you can work on it. You can create more. So yeah, so that's what it's all about.
Now, when you turned the woman into a black and white, did you give her a painterly effect, or is it just the?
No.
What it was?
I just used an opacity slider and just lightened her up just enough to, you know, I wanted the gray in her clothing to match the gray in the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And the sense of motion in the trees just means that, you know, this is just somewhere other than reality. It's a dreamlike state. It's you know, it's reality in a dreamlike state. And so yeah, matching the blacks was really important, or the grays, I should say. Matching the grays was real important in this. And like I said, I had to bring some of that snow onto her feet, that so it looks like she's grounded and not just pasted into the image.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about putting footprints in here, but I felt that was a little bit distracting, and that was going to be a little bit hard to do. So I kind of nixed that idea.
I noticed, I brought up the histogram. It looks like it's blown out, but really when you look at the picture, it doesn't. Did you knock down the highlights somewhat there? Or?
I had to play with the highlights quite a bit because at first it looked a little too gray to me. Obviously stark white isn't going to work either. So again, I had to tone it down to where it was white, but it didn't show. For example, you know, when I did the motion blur, you can see where on the right side, you can see that area that sort of looks like a square gray area. And that was part of the trees that were way in the background in the original tree picture. And so by blurring it, it looks okay, but I also had to lighten it. Yeah, you can see it back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of back in there. And so I had to make sure it was lightened enough to just really, you know, blend in and not be obvious.
Mm-hmm. It's a stunning picture.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions on this? Boy, everybody is just so quiet. Are you awake?
Are you awake?
Okay, so then I will have a question. What when you took the woman, what lens were you using in order not to know that you were stalking her?
I was using my what I use for street photography is my 24-70.
Mm.
And so because, you know, it's a great travel lens. You can get you know, you can get the architecture in, you can get a sense of architecture, buildings and that sort of thing. And being on the street, I knew that, you know, I wasn't going to get in anybody's face. I wanted to be less obvious. And so I really wanted to, you know, kind of stay back. And I was using my my Sony A7R III, which is 42 megapixels. And so I knew that if I was going to have to shoot from far away, I could crop in pretty good and still get a decent image, still get a decent resolution for doing anything I wanted to with it.
Mm.
Do you recall the focal length of this particular picture?
Actually, it was probably, you know, it was probably 70.
Mhm. Yeah, it
Because
looks
I
a
really
little,
was I really wanted to make sure that, I still wanted the scenery around. I wanted the walkway and everything, but I was probably getting that with a 70 from where I was. So I
yeah,
would say it's
it looks a
probably,
little compressed. That's why I thought maybe it was more extended.
yeah, yeah.
Beautiful picture.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. And I, I was looking at that close up when we were talking a few days ago, and I thought she was carrying an iPhone behind her. But it was a purse. So it was kind of funny.
But I feel even without doing the composite that, you know, I feel good because I felt like I captured a sense of, you know, the real Mykonos, the real Greece, you know, or the people that are in it. But when the tourists are out, you just don't see the real people. They're gone, you know, they're back in their house or doing what they're doing and they're gone. So yeah,
what's the
early
time-
morning is a good time to get out and see the
How
cities.
early? How early?
I would say soon before the sun even came up.
Wow.
Yeah, before that blue hour, you know, that blue hour is awesome to photograph anything. Whether this is a little bit past the blue hour, you can see, but I'm usually out for at least a couple hours if I'm out walking around. You know, so yeah, from as soon as it's light enough to start shooting for a couple hours, and then it's pretty much history after that.
Mm-hmm. How cold was it there? Because she did have a coat on.
Oh, it wasn't cold at all. This was during, was it June? It was actually very, very hot. Not in the morning, it was nice in the morning, but during the day, yeah, it got very hot.
Yeah. Actually, where I'm from, which is Astoria, New York, it's the refugee home of, no, the home of refugee Greeks. And there's a huge Greek contingent, and you take the subway and you see all these the older ladies dressed like that. I don't think they do that anymore, but
yeah,
very familiar looking. Okay, you know what? We are on time. Does anybody have questions?
Cheryl is asking how much time is invested in that image. And, you know, it's made up of 3 images. I think the most time I spent was on the first image with the trees in it. And the rest of it came together pretty quickly after that. So I would say, you know, maybe a couple hours. Some images go real fast, others take a long time, maybe even days. You might have to come, you know, set them aside and come back to them.
One of these days, we might have a program just to discuss what makes for a creative photo, because I think I mentioned it with Jan as well, that we seem to have different ideas as to what is intended by the rules for creative. Some just kind of flip, like they say, just don't flip a switch and say, I'm taking it into impressions and just clicking on it, and that makes it. It's something quite different than that. And I think here you show a very good example of what it takes. You not only use a composite, but then you completely change it. And I recall Dawn's image a few shows ago where he had the bird coming out of the book, and it would be very interesting to find out what the thought processes were. And I think, Jan, you gave a very good example of what you did to turn these 2 pictures and bring them together to create an image and an idea that you had in your mind and how you made it work. So I think that was very important. And
thank you, Lucille.
Sure. Does anybody have any other questions before we close this out?
Lucy, I just want to thank you for putting this together.
Oh, you're welcome. Actually, I have a request. Ed Lindquist tells everybody, I was so impressed by the level of photography knowledge by each presenter. I would hope so. Wow, great. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for attending this program. We had a very good turnout. I was wondering whether it was just going to be 5 of us. So I appreciate everybody coming, especially since I gathered that there were a lot of people who were kind of getting same old type of a feeling because of the scoring. And my idea was to take it away from just the score and to really move into what the photographer, him or herself, was thinking of when they created the photo. Maybe it didn't start out being a certain way, but how they turned it into a picture that would make it a 13. Remember, as a reminder, we will be holding a different type of a special program. We've tentatively scheduled it on May 11th. And again, this is to get at a sense that I've been getting from photographers, including myself, that didn't quite get the 13, where they didn't get to a 13, although they thought, as I did, that my picture should have been a 13, and didn't understand why the juror didn't score it that way. And I think what we wanted to do is to have our peers take a look at it, and instead of scoring it, taking a look and saying, all right, what would I do to bring it up a notch, to make it a truly better picture, but really taking the time and having interaction between the photographer and your peers as to what it would take and how you could benefit from that kind of analysis. So we were thinking, if we do hold it on May 11th, we would look at it from getting to the next level in your photographic skill, which would be the theme. And those of you who would like to participate, think about any images which you did score between a 10 and a 12, which you thought really should have been a higher score, and be willing to subject yourself to constructive criticism, or even just praise, lavish praise, like, what was that juror thinking about? And then you can email me if you want to volunteer, and we would select between 4 and 6 volunteers for the evening, although I think probably 4, because hopefully we'll get a lot more people wanting to comment. Also, you can, and this is what is important to me and to the rest of the board, email me with your comments on what you think worked well and didn't work so well this evening, and we'll try and incorporate those suggestions into the next program. As you can tell, we still had glitches. This kind of a program, like Zoom, of course, isn't as easy as one would think. And with that, unless anybody has additional questions, we can say good evening for the rest of the evening. Anything? Anything?
I'd like to say thank you, Lucille.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I really hope that people take a minute and respond, send you or shoot the board or shoot you an email, and just give us a thumbs up. Tell us if you like it. Tell us if you don't, and what your ideas are. So
Okay.
I really enjoyed this. So
Thank you. And thanks to the board for being so willing to experiment. That really meant a lot to me.
I think this was an excellent program, Lucille.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
okay, see you next time.
Okay, bye. Oh,